We're live.
You know that because it says you're
We're
live.
live. Yeah, I'm just reading. Just reading and changing the tense ever so slightly. Hello, good evening, and I will now make my phone quieter.
Can't get the stamp.
Can't get the stamp. I'm using it as a bookmark. Right. Because I need a page open in the book. I need to sit with the book because I can't commit everything to memory. Not quite that brilliant yet. So, can people see it? Like the
I can.
Yeah, great. Mick can only see, but he can also hear. Excellent.
Ooh.
That's jolly good.
Oh, we're dangling a carrot then, wins.
I know. Oh, excuse me. So, usual format. What's been going on over the course of this last week? Mostly hobby-oriented. And then we will have the ramble subject. Then Q&A, because the amazing Crimson will be capturing the cues so that I can A. And we'll see how we get on. So, hobbying over this last week. Well, I've not done much on the hobby buildy painty side of the hobby. I built a few things. I built a model to squirrel away to the painting studio that needs painted up for a future game. So I did that. It's not that secret, but it's not unsecret. It's one of the special characters in the what's it called? In the Siege of Excelsis. That's going to be in one of the later games. And here we go. Super chat from Mick the Machine. Evening, any plans to play Heresy or Necromunda? Sorry, I thought I'd ask the stupid question nice and early. Lol. Okay.
You may be sporting one of those t-shirts from the channel that I saw somebody put on earlier.
Oh, well, there's a story behind that. Any plans to play Heresy or Necromunda? No immediate plans to play Heresy or Necromunda. I'll talk in a minute about some stuff that we've done 40k wise over the last month or so. And for a while after that, I'll be focusing on A of the O of the S, as it were, because the smart money says that 10th Ed 40k is going to drop in June. I've not heard that from any official source, but that's what the smart money is, and I kind of buy into it. So the recent 40Ks, we'll talk about in a minute, is probably the last bits of 40k I'll do for a little while until I get more of an idea of what's happening or not happening. Besides, I have some real hardcore AOS stuff to do. So no, focus is going to be on AOS and AOS. May end up playing some Warcry, depending on what ends up happening with other people. But no plans to play Heresy because I'm not keen on the setting. The rule set sounds amazing, but I'm not keen on the setting, and I don't want to have to build another 25 armies. So no. And Necromunda, there's just not enough brain in the skull to do yet more. So yeah, I've done a few assembling of things. One to get shipped off to March of War to get painted. So that's built, and I say shipped. I passed it to him in a cardboard box this last weekend. And I've done a little bit of assembly of a few Stormcasts because I've got a because I have got some Stormcasts I want to build with my newly acquired knowledge. So that's the sort of hobby side of things. In terms of gaming, some of you who've been watching the Rising Shadow campaign, the third episode went live on the channel yesterday. It's getting some great feedback. A lot of people are really enjoying it. which is really good. People may recall, because I probably mentioned this earlier on in a previous thingy. We only managed to film 3 out of the 5 episodes in the first weekend. Took an awful lot longer than expected, and we had scheduled to film the episodes 4 and 5, with 5 being the finale, this last weekend. We didn't think the games would be quick, but they were an awful lot longer than we expected. Both episodes 4 and 5, the bat reps are around about the 4-hour mark. They are big. So we now have those in the bank. That was that was a fun and exhausting weekend of filming those. Big thanks to everyone involved, and especially to Crimson for keeping us all fed and watered. So that's my hobby week. Crimson, how about yourself?
Well, I did a lot of arranging for the weekend. So yeah, so mine were took up by shopping lists and essential things for the weekend. So no, not really.
Cooking, bacon,
cooking and everything like that. So yeah, most of all, I did some. Yeah, I have half put together a Troggoth.
Well, very well done.
Heck, a Troggoth.
What kind of Troggoth? A fell water Troggoth.
Yeah. I know it had water in it.
I am mightily impressed. So
I did a lot of sort of tidying up and getting ready for people to come, and quite a few stayed over. Well, a few stayed over, didn't they? So I did a bit of that. Thanks, Moog. I'm glad you liked it.
It's like you're in the studio and you're playing the game, and then all of a sudden the door gently opens up, and then this tray of cake just comes in. We're like, pause, cake face!
And then sweets, and then cake, and then drinks, and then cake. Yeah.
So then you have to...
Then food.
And you're not just rolling dice at that point, you're rolling us out the door.
So yeah, it was lots of fun. It was indeed.
So that's our sort of hobby roundup, isn't it?
Yeah. Whenever there's some sort of event on, I'm just taken up a little bit by that. But no, it was all well worth it. It was great.
Aye. So, moving on to today's topic. Well, I have... So some of you will know I have done a ramble about this subject before, where I tried to make sense of all the units of the Stormcast Eternal book, because there are a lot of units, and there are scores of different types of heroes and dozens of different unit types, and it's not particularly intuitive about what they all are, how they all interact with each other, and if you're doing a narrative army, how to put it together in such a way that it makes sense. I did a bit of a ramble about that, and it was okay. It wasn't great, but it was good. It was okay. Since then, I have consumed an awful lot more audiobooks, done a lot more reading, and had a number of epiphanies around how it all structures. And with that background knowledge, I've dug into the book more and ferreted my way around it in an attempt to try and work out how to do a narrative Stormcast list. And a lot of people will say, Stormcast are just AOS Space Marines. And there are a lot of parallels with them. There absolutely are a lot of parallels. And actually, some of those parallels really helped me make sense of how to do an AOS army narratively. Because if you're doing a Astartes army narratively, if ignoring Primaris for the minute, because Primaris are just layers on top of an existing structure, but any Astartes force, you One of the formations that they deploy quite a lot, narratively speaking, are companies and demi companies. And a demi company has a pretty formulaic structure. It's 3 tactical marines, 1 squads, 1 assault squad, 1 devastator squad, transports, probably a dreadnought because the company has multiple, and 1 of the 2 company characters, so the chaplain or the captain, with some HQ to go with them, possibly the apothecary, etc., 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 etc. And one of the pennies that's dropped for me with the Stormcast Eternals is how to make that direct comparison. So I'm going to have the book open and I am going to be looking at it whilst I'm talking. Now I'm going to page 30, doesn't have a number on it, 36 and 37 in the book, and it looks like this. If you want to see what I'm looking at to help make sense of it, if you have the book, that's the page I'm on, or there are pictures of this or on the interwebs. I am sure there are. It's the structure, and it has the commanders, the command echelon, the different types of chambers, and so on. Now, where I started with this is looking at the warrior chamber, because that's the one that gets mentioned most in the narratives. And in the warrior chamber, it says command echelon is 1 to 3 lords, doesn't tell you what kind of lords, and 3 to 9 knights, doesn't tell you what kind of knights. Leaves it to your imagination. Now, some of this I have pieced together. And then it says Angelos conclaves, 3 retinues, Paladin conclaves, 6 retinues, Redeemer conclaves, 9 retinues, Justicar conclaves, 3 retinues. Now, first time round, I sort of thought, well, how on earth can I build a narrative army from that? Because that one of the other things earlier on in the book, it says that a retinue is typically 10 people, 10 Stormcast Eternals. It's the typical size of a retinue. So I'm like, okay, so 1 retinue equals 10 Stormcasts. It's like, okay, some of them come in some of them come in 3, some come in 5, some come in 10. It's like, okay, well, you can scale that up with multiples, so that's not a problem. So a 3 is like, okay, you need to reinforce it twice. You've got 9, close enough. And I sort of thought, well, this just really then says take whatever you want, because I could take 3 Justicar retinues and say that it's a warrior chamber, or I could take all paladins or all Angelos or all Redeemer, and it would like, yeah, it's a warrior chamber. Thought, well, that's a bit, that doesn't really help me. And then a penny dropped for me. It's all about the ratios, I think. So Angelos 3, Paladin 6, Redeemer 9, Justicar 3. If you employ some elementary mathematics and divide all those by the lowest common denominator, it means the ratio of these units to each other is 1 Angelos to 2 Paladin to 3 Redeemer to 1 Justicar. So I'm like, okay, so if I'm doing a balanced warrior chamber, they are the ratios I need to stick to. And then looking a bit at what constitutes a Justicar, a Redeemer, a Paladin, and so on, because it's not always obvious. Some of it tells you in the keywords. Some of it, you have to ferret it out in the description in the various other parts of the book. But one thing I did notice, in the seemingly random order that everything is all the war scrolls are put together, all the Angelos are together, all the Paladins are together, all the Redeemers are together, and all the Justicars are together. So there's a logic to it from that perspective. It doesn't tell you this is the Justicar section, the Redeemer section, here they all are, but it kind of is put together in that way. What then helps me go further with that is a Space Marine analogy. So if I want a demi company, as it were, I have to have 3 Redeemer retinues. Oh, yeah, and this is where I was saying a retinue is 10 men, 10 people. I need to have 2 Paladin retinues, 20 Paladins, 1 Angelos retinue, 10 Angelos, and 1 Justicar retinue, 10 Justicar. And then it's like, okay, what role do these units actually play in the in the Storm host? And there is the Space Marine analogy holds. The Redeemer conclaves, they are your tactical units. They do well at holding objectives. They can dish out some damage, but not a huge amount, and they can take damage. They are your battle line. They're your tactical Marines. Your Justicars are your range support. They're your crossbows. They're your archers. So they're your devastators. So 3 tactical to 1 devastator. Does this sound familiar? You look at Angelos. They're your flying stormcasts with the wings. They're assault marines. And again, the ratio is 3 tactical squads, 3 Redeemer squads, 1 Justicar squad, 1 Devastator squad, 1 Angelos squad, 1 assault squad. And the Paladins are your Terminators. They are the heavy infantry that do a lot of the work. The other, you've got your backline support coming from your shooting Justicars. You've got your scouting and picking off choice targets from your Angelos. You've got your Redeemers holding the lines, and then you've got your Paladins smashing face. You know, your Terminators that will go into the heart of the fighting and do a lot of killing and so on. So that then makes your structure fairly firm. Then it comes on to the command echelon. Well, if you look at 1 Lord and 3 to 9 Knights, then that's somewhere between 4 and 12 command models in commanders in the Warrior Chamber, which you can then break down into ratios. So if you're doing the 3-2-1-1, that is a third of the Warrior Chamber. So that led me to think, okay, so 3-2-1-1, I need a third of those ratios. So what is actually that? Well, it's 1 Lord, potentially 1 or more Lords. Sorry, not 1 or more Lords. It's somewhere between 1 character and 4 characters, depending on whether you're on the lower end of 4 or the higher end of 12. So it's any of the command echelon for the type of Warrior Chamber that fit into those ratios. And the command echelon, so your Lords, they are fairly standard. You've got your Lord Celestant, which is basically your captain. But your Lord Relictor, which is basically your chaplain. They're the 2 main leaders. You also have the Lord Castellan, who is sort of a defensive version of the captain. I haven't found a direct analogy with Space Marines on that one. You've also got your Lord Veritant. They are sort of like your witch huntery types, the sort of chaos purgy types. I don't think I'm forgetting any of the main ones. Then you have your knights. So some of the knights are quite obvious where they link, even though it doesn't explicitly say it anywhere in the book. So, for example, you've got the Heraldor Temple. So they're your Knight Heraldors. They are the ones who have a blaring horn announcing the coming of Sigmar that scares the heebie-jeebies out of people. The Justicar Temple, they are the Justicar Temple are the what's it? They're like the Justicar Conclaves. They're like an officer of the Justicar Conclaves. So they will So it's like if you want Justicars, you can take one of those. The Relictor Temple, that's kind of where the Lord Relictor comes from, but there are also Knight Relictors. And the Valedictor Temple is now that's quite interesting. The Valedictor Temple, so they are the Knight. Let me get this right. Two of the knights. There's the two wizard knights. One is actually in the Sacrosanct chamber, and one isn't. The Knight Arcanum. So there is a whole chamber dedicated to the wizards, and there are loads of stuff, and I'll come on to those in a minute. But actually, the Knight Arcanum aren't part of the wizard chamber. They are separate. So they're if you're being narrative, if you want a wizard with a warrior chamber, you go down the Valedictor Temple route rather than the Sacrosanct chamber route. There are also then knights that link to some of the other temples. So, for example, this is where I said it's not all quite at my fingertips, so apologies. So, for example, you've got a flying knight called the Knight of Zeros. He is effectively an Angelos knight. So you've got all these different commanders and knight options that you can pick and mix into the army. And it's the kind of thing where if you were building a big army, you'd take one of everything as you built up your army, and then you would decide which ones were being put into that force. So, for example, you might have, if a warrior chamber was being deployed, it wouldn't all necessarily be under the direct command of the Lord Celestant. It might be that the Lord Celestant is leading a portion of it, the Lord Relictor is leading another portion of it, the Lord Castellan is leading another portion of it. And it's like, okay, which portion am I looking at? Right, what's the Lord Castellan? Right, who's with him? Oh, actually, it's the Knight. It's the Knight Relictor and the Knight Judicator. All right, okay, they're going off doing their thing. So that's broadly a warrior chamber. Now, where it gets a little bit more interesting, I say more interesting, that's the main one you hear talked about in the books. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 in total. And there are the main 3 that came from the original Stormcast Eternals stuff, and the other ones that have been effectively chambers, expansions from different editions, but narratively chambers that have been opened up as the wars have progressed. So the other 2 main ones are the Harbinger Chamber and the Exemplar Chamber, and they are all constituted by exactly the same units of the Warrior Chamber, but in different combinations. So a Harbinger Chamber does not have any paladin units. It's not about smashing, it's about fast scouting and outmaneuvering. And as such, their ratios are 9 Angelos to 3 Redeemer to 3 Justicar. Scale it down, 3 Angelos, 1 Justicar, 1 Redeemer. So 3 assault squads, 1 Devastator squad, 1 tactical squad. So tactical squad to hold a bit of ground, get a bit of backup from the Devastators, from the Justicars, but then lots of super maneuverable units. Now the Angelos are a little bit of a problem child from a units point of view, because they haven't put a lot of variants into the Angelos since they started the game. The Prosecutors, the guys with the big wings, are the main Angelos unit. They have introduced no others in the they've put some others in the Vanguard auxiliary chamber, but not general ones that are accessible to Exemplar, Warrior, and Harbinger. Of course, you can take any of these. They cover the whole thing with brotherhoods, and a brotherhood can be assembled from whatever warriors are needed at any point in time to do a specific task. Then they're disbanded and they all go back to their individual chambers. So there's narrative reason to be able to just do whatever you randomly want to, but there is narrative reason to be very, very specific. Now, one of the things with the Angelos, they have introduced the Storm Strike Chariot, which is a gorgeous model, and doesn't say it's Angelos in the War Scroll, but if you read the text in the book, it's like, yeah, they're they are Angelos. And I thought, oh yeah, great, I've got one of those, I've painted one of those, I can use that. But then I thought, it's only got 2 crew. So does that mean if I want a full retinue of Angelos, I've got to have 5 chariots? I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of points. And then that's a lot of money. So I'm not sure on that yet. I still think the Angelos options are a bit restricted, which is why I've been eBaying lots of cheap prosecutors from the eBays, because a lot of people sell them off. So I can do some Angelos units. So that's the Harbinger chamber. It's fast. Then you have the Exemplar chamber, which is the absolute hammer to crack a nut. So the Exemplar chamber has no redeeming units, no tactical marines. And the ratios are 1 Angelos, so 1 assault, 3 paladin, so 3 terminators, and 1 Justicar, so 1 devastator. That is for breaking key targets. When in the stories they talk about the warrior chambers, they sort of say that the ones who do most of the killing in the warrior chambers are the paladins, but they're also there to hold ground and scout and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the Exemplar chamber is it really is there for smashy and not an awful lot else. You can also equate this in 40k to different types of I want to say formations to pick your army. So the Harbinger chamber is pretty analogous with an Outrider detachment. The Exemplar chamber is pretty analogous with a Vanguard. There isn't the equivalent of a Spearhead. So those are the 3 main ones. You've then got actually, have we had any questions on any of that at that point? Yeah. Then sort of break and come back to the other ones.
I've just got a question from earlier on, just from Niall Walsh. She says, from a narrative perspective, how would you create magic heavy stormcasts with diagons?
Dragons?
Might have
possibly
been.
Dragons.
Yeah, possibly dragons.
So, magic heavy with dragons. Actually, could we come back to that one? Because I haven't talked about the dragons yet.
Yeah, I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
I think we'd forgotten that one.
No.
And so Sarcastic Monkey says, so on the death stuff, is it just me, or are the how do you say that?
Ossiarch.
Bone Reapers somewhat thin with their lineup?
I've only ever played against Ossiarch Bone Reapers once. I've seen them played a couple of times, all by Kiwok, the almost official mascot. And I've seen 2 units used extensively. I couldn't tell you what they were called. Big flappy ones and massive big ones with lots of arms. The generic rank and file Ossiarchs didn't get much use. Now I can't honestly hand on heart say whether that was because they're no good, so Kieran hadn't taken many. It was only one game, it was only one list. I don't know if he always builds the same list, or if that was because narratively the army is structured more around some of the bigger things. They seemed okay. But they are one of the ranges that really hasn't been refreshed. I don't even know how long it's been since they refreshed the range. The only thing I really do know about the Ossiarch Bone Reapers is there is the most amazing diorama in Warhammer World. You know, the one where they're all dragging the bones into the temple and tipping them into pits?
Yeah, I do. That is really cool.
They are the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. And that, if you ever go to Warhammer World, that is almost a reason to go in itself. It's like a 5-foot cube, and it's got this Ossiarch temple on top with people pouring bone sacrifices into a pit. And then you've got layers underneath, like 5 levels of them then molding the bone and shaping weapons and ranks of warriors lined up. It is superb. It really is superb. So certainly the Ossiarch Bone Reaper. I've only been playing in 3rd Ed, so I don't know if the Bone Reapers had their battle tome refreshed just before 3rd Ed came out, or if it's been years. So I honestly couldn't say, I'm afraid. I must try harder. I need to get them as an army so I can work it all out. It's one of the few AOS armies I don't have. I mean, most of them aren't painted, but it's one of the few I haven't had. One of the few I don't have.
And just a comment from Sarcastic Monkey as well, just to show that we don't all like the same things, but interesting that how we all get enticed into the Stormcast, but he feels they're a little bit bland now, to be honest.
Yeah, they can be.
Yeah, they can be, and everybody's choice.
Similar to Space Marines, they are fairly one-dimensional, and there is a lot you can do with them, or they can become fairly boring. Similar to Space Marines, I find a lot of the Primaris Marines fairly one-dimensional because they're all there to do one specific job, and I find that quite dull. And I can see the Stormcasts playing like that if one takes similar units again and again and again. So I can totally see that. But equally, they're kind of the poster children for AOS, and there's something very cool about the being made of lightning and not being able to die. But then there's stuff in the narrative about, well, what does happen when they die, because they get messed up and really weird stuff can happen to them. See Soul Wars for further detail. We got more questions, or should I carry on?
Carry on.
Okay.
We've got some questions in Discord, but obviously we'll do them later.
Yeah. Or maybe we save them. Maybe we save them until next time if they're not about this.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see how we do for time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, there are 3 other chambers, and they kind of got filled in. Come on, brain. Okay, let me talk about the one.
Just mention. Sorry. Just mention Joe's comment there. It's just because that's like from the comment from before, so that might help.
Stormcast and Space Marines are the basic unit. You make them interesting by adding flavour. Salamanders and Marines, but different. Knights Excelsior or Stormcast, but different. That is very true. The narrative section
it might be relevant.
It's very relevant.
Yeah.
Well spotted.
Oof,
well spotted.
Oof.
The different storm hosts add a lot of very, very different flavour to each one. To the extent that with all the various models I've got, at the moment, I've kind of got three storm hosts on the go because they are in the same way as a Space Marine chapter. I choose to collect them and play them differently. My Iron Hands, I've got loads of tanks, loads of dreadnoughts, loads of artillery pieces, tech marines. And and I play them differently because they are stone cold calculating monsters. They will happily leave a unit of Battle Brothers out to die if it's the most pragmatic thing to do in the scenario. Ultramarines will never leave a brother behind. They will pour in there to save them. And Blood Angels, they all have different ways of playing if you slip into the narrative skin of that army. Exactly as Joe says, they're the basic unit and you layer the narrative around them. The Astral Templars, the army that I'm collecting most of at the moment, Stormcast-wise, they all originate from Gur, from a hunter tribe, and they all have twin idols because they still worship, for want of a better word, their hunter deity, as well as Sigmar. There's a book referred to about what's his name? It's Godsmore, the Bear Eater, and he keeps on running around going Bear Eater, and it's because they are cheerfully raw barbarians who feel more about camaraderie and campfires and wearing their enemies' skins in a sort of cured, furry kind of way than they are anything else. And I think that adds a lot of flavour to how you choose to play them. The Anvils, the Heldenhammer, are all ones, rather than being plucked away. Most Stormcast Eternals, Sigmar scoured the realms for worthy souls, and just before they were killed, whisked them away, and then remade them. Thus, sort of kind of cheating Nagash, but Nagash was annoyed, but kind of okay with it. To build the Anvils, the Heldenhammer, Sigmar went delving in the underworlds of Shaiish to try and find really cool souls that had been dead for freaking ages. And he went, I'm having you, I'm having you, I'm having you. That was robbing Nagash, and Nagash is about that. But they are all much more, they're much more morose. They are unnerving to be around because they're all from different periods of time and history, and it sort of shows through in their character, and their special thing is that they're unnerving to be around. They affect the bravery of things around them because they are just corpse creepy, and they have two masters. They fight for Sigmar, but they are owed to Nagash, and at some point the debt will have to be paid, and that comes into it with some of them. So there's a lot of really cool around what chamber you pick and how the mindset you put yourself in when you're playing. That's what does it for me. I don't know about other people, but yeah, that. So the three other chambers have come in at different points. So the Sacrosanct chamber were released during the Soul Wars to combat the surge of the Nighthorns. The idea is that Sigmar has been building a shed load of different types of chambers for frickin' ages. And when he set about the reconquest of the realms, the Realm Gate Wars, he opened up the Exemplar, Warrior, and Harbinger chambers and unleashed them on the mortal realms. So the notion is that at that point in time, the Extremis chamber were there, so were the Vanguard chamber, so were the Sacrosanct, but they were tools in his arsenal that he had not deployed yet. He had not found the right time to use them and to unleash them. And so he unsealed the Sacrosanct chambers during the Soul Wars. Now, these are pretty much all wizards, and their units are all very different. There are some similar chambers, so you still have Redeemer chambers and Justicar chambers, but the Redeemers are all Sequitors. They're not Liberators, Vindicars, Vanquishers. They're all Sequitors. The Judicars aren't Justicars. The Justicars aren't all Judicars. I think I've got that the right way around. They are Castigators instead. and then it releases the 2 new chambers, the 2 new types of conclave, the Corpuscant conclave and the Ordinatus conclave. The Corpuscant conclaves are the evocators. They are the warrior wizards. All of them have some kind of warrior power. So typically, the Sequitors and the Castigators have like a twin ability. So in any given game-wise, in a turn, you pick whether they're doing something defensively or something offensively or similar. And that's how they're channeling their weak magical powers. The evocators are sufficiently powerful that that collectively together they are a wizard. So those units are effectively units of battle wizards, but they count as one wizard because they channel their power together. And the Sacrostans are what they called the catapults, the sort of artillery pieces. Previously, the Sacrostans had only been mounted on forts and battlements to defend walls and such, but they then they made them man portable at this point, and so the ratios you have is it goes 2 evocators to 2 sequitors to 1 castigator to 1 sacristan, and then they're the ratios for your sacrosanct chamber, and it's about 2,500 points if you stick to that ratio, and you do 10 retinues that are 10 large. Although the sacristans, would you have 5 catapults as a retinue? I don't think you would. You need to give that some thought. What some of this does mean is you end up with really expensive units. The evocators are like hundreds of points for a unit, as are, if you go back to the warrior chamber, the paladins, and they come in multiples of 5. So as soon as you narratively want 10 of them, they're like 500-point units. And if the ratio says you want 2 of them, you're like, okay, so these ones, these are 1,000 points before I even started on anything else. And and a lot of that means that you're playing larger games if you're sticking to the ratios. You can go, so okay, well, if I just do 5s rather than 10s and keep the ratios right, yeah, there's some value in that. You can sort of say, oh, well, these are retinues that have been worn down over time, or other individuals deployed elsewhere. For me, I like the notion. So you could also say, all right, I've got a unit of 10, but I'm actually going to deploy them as 2 5s, which now for me, I would then make sure I only had 1 prime. And then, because that has an effect on the game, because the prime is the one who can issue orders to the unit. And if you've got a retinue of 10 and you want to split them tactically, you're at a disadvantage because your leader's over here and the other one's over there. And I like that. I am inclined away from the idea of going, okay, I need 10 of these, so I'm going to have 5 and 5, but they've got 2 sergeants basically. No, it's 1 unit of 10. They can split rule-wise, that game-wise they can deploy as 2 units, but they've only got 1 sergeant. But you could give them 2 sergeants rule-wise. So it's preference and adherence to narrative and or not. Then the lords and knights in the Sacrosanct Chamber. You've got 3 lords. You've got the Lord Arcanum, who is the wizardy whiz. The Lord Exorcist, who is the go-away ghosts. And then you've got the Lord Ordinator, who is artillery, fire, Lord. There's only 1 knight from what I've been able to see, and that is the Knight Incantor, who is a better wizzy whiz than an evocator, but not as wizardy whiz as a Lord Arcanum. One of the interesting things with the Sacrosanct Chamber is, other than the Extremis Chamber, they are the only chamber to have Draconis mounts. So they have, I think it's Celestial Dracolines, evocators, and Lord Arcanums can be mounted on Dracolines. So to go back to the earlier question, if you want to have a dragony wizard army, You want a Sacrosanct Chamber, and you want Evocators on Celestial Dracolines and a Lord Arcanum on a Celestial Dracoline. There aren't any options for the actual flying dragons to be wizards that I am aware of. So if you desperately want the dragon and wizard combination, you need to go for the non-flying dragons in the Sacrosanct Chamber. Speaking of the big dragons, you then have the Extremis Chamber. Now, the Extremis Chamber is interesting because they are all basically dragon mounted. And a lot of so when some of his children went to Dracothian and said, we want to join the war against chaos, he said, go, join the war. And he sent them off. He let them go.
Did he say like that? Go.
Go.
Join
No,
the war.
He probably said something in dragon. But I don't speak dragon.
Okay.
But basically, he gave them leave to leave his realm, go to the mortal realms and fight chaos. But the mount chooses the rider. They sometimes can spend months or years observing an individual before they decide whether or not they are worthy to be their mount. But then the ones that they find, the ones that they choose, they are strong companions of. And effectively, you get a number of different types. You get some different types, but the agenda is always similar. They're the only warriors who are free to decide where they're going to fight. And it is because they are given leave to join any battle, join any brotherhood, join any chamber, join any force, which they think will these aren't the right words for it, but basically progress the dragon agenda. They concern themselves with more dragony things. To an extent, they're guided by their mounts as to where they go, but they have leave to fight wherever they wish to fight, and that tends to be an inclination towards what will further the aims of their dragon mounts. You got a number of different types, not a huge amount. Commanders wise, you have Lord Celestants. I don't know if they can be Drake Sworn. I think they're only riding Star Drakes, which are one of the bigger breeds of dragon. The Drake Sworn Temple are the ones who ride the Drakes, which are the flying dragons. I think, from what I remember, game-wise, the only real difference between those and the Dracolines are the presence of wings, so their movement value. You also get Drake Sworn Knights. They are one of the Chamber's Knights, one of the Chamber's leaders. You then also get the Dracothian Guard, who ride the Celestial Dracolines. You get a couple of different types. You get the Lightning Echelon, which are the Tempestors and the Fulminators. And you get the Thunderwave Echelon, which are the Desolators and the Concussors. Essentially, without actually having the keywords, the Dracothian Guard are all paladins. The Concussors. Now here's where they've got subtly different names, but there's like three main types of paladin: Redeemer, Desolator, and another one. And each type of Dracothian Guard is basically one of them on a Dracolith. A Celestial Dracoline. And that's basically the gist of the Extremis Chamber. You can form an army out of them. They will fight as a group towards a particular aim, or generally speaking, they will decide where and with whom they are going to do whatever it is they are going to want to do, because a dragon's going to do what a dragon's going to do. That's the Extremis Chamber. And last but not least are the Vanguard Auxiliary Chambers. And these are the ones that they're the sort of extreme scouts. They live out in the wild and they track down and they hunt the enemies of Sigmar. They are less, here's a battle, let's go and smash it, and more, let's find what it is we need to do. Right, we found it, let's smash it, but we're really kind of sneaky about it. And the majority of these have some ability to ride the winds etheric, whether it's by the use of an astral compass or from a tech problem. So
yeah, it keeps throwing me off.
No,
I know. Cheeky.
How rude!
Very rude.
Ooh, where was I? Don't know. Oh yes. So the night, the Palador retinue are ones where they have riders form a pairing with Griff Chargers. Now, Griff Chargers can ride the winds etheric. They can disappear from one place, wibbly wobbly, winds etheric, hello, somewhere else. So they're hyper mobile, but they don't quite hit so hard because their strength is their mobility. Similarly, you have similar ratios. It's only Angelos units and only Justicar units, but similar to the Sacrosanct, the Vanguard chambers have their own Angelos units and their own Justicar units. So, and these ratios are something, and they are a little less obvious because you have to count things yourself. But it's 1 Angelos Palador to 3 Angelos Hunters to 1 Justicar Raptor. Now, Raptors are the ones that have a reputation for sitting at the back with very big guns and just deleting enemy units on the other side of the table. They are there are two. You got the two types. You've got the fast-moving close support with the repeater crossbows, and you've got the long-range snipey ones that will just take something out from afar. These guys tend to have a strong affinity with ether wings. They tend to fight in pairs, and the ether wings will scout on ahead, and there'll be some kind of intuition between them that guides the shots of the Justicars. Plus one to hit. So it's mostly So it's 1 Palador to 3 Hunter to 1 Raptor, and that is coincidentally, not by design, almost exactly what I've got in my 1,000 points of not quite Vanguard but almost Vanguard. I need to do some changing. I've got a Chariot in there. Chariot doesn't belong in there. I need to take the Chariot out and put another character in there. In terms of their command structure, the Lord Aquilor is always the Lord of the Vanguard chambers. The Lord Aquilor rides a Griff Charger and is their equivalent of a Commander Beatstick. He's not quite as good as a Lord Celestant, but he does other stuff that is more sneaky. And the Knights, there are 2 officer types of the Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber, and they are leaving my head, and I'll have to look them up. The Knight Venator is 1. Oh, what did I just hit? What's that your leg? Oh, sorry, you're right.
Knee crack.
I did. I'm sorry,
Yes, it's broke my leg.
I was just tucking my leg under the chair. I didn't realise yours was there. I'm sorry. So the Knight Venator is one of the officer types of the Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber. Now, they're one of the flyy wingy ones, but that doesn't mean they're a prosecutor. They are kind of a ranged assassin. Not kind of an assassin. They're a positional unit to get into the right place, and using its realm hunter bow, take out key targets. They often have Star Eagle companions that help them find these targets and take them out. They're more. It's the auxiliary chamber is a sort of precision tool. Glass hammer, I think, is possibly a better way of describing it. From looking at them, they don't all have great saves compared to some of the other units, and the damage output isn't great. It's average. So position is key with all these guys, and the Knight Venator reflects that. They're a flying unit. They've got a 12-inch move, and they've got a fairly chunky ranged attack, but don't do a huge amount else. So its position is everything there. The other one is the Knight Zeros. I want to say Knight Zeros, not Knight Zephyros. No, it is the Knight Zeros. So Neve Black Talon is the famous Knight Zeros. She is, of course, Hammers of Sigmar. And they are Sigmar's assassins. Sigmar gives them a target. Go here, kill this person. And they also ride the Winds of Theric. Neve Black Talon was the first of them to learn how to do this.
Are you saying Neve?
Yes, Neve Black Talon.
Right, okay.
Yeah. She was the first one to do it, but the others have since learnt the same ability. And they, with their twin axes, will hunt their target, appear near them, hack them to bits, and then run off. They are an assassin. But when they're not on an individual hunt, and when they're not on a tasked hunt, they act as officers for the Vanguard chambers and join the chamber for their collective hunts. And that is what I know about how to build narrative Stormcast lists.
I've got a question.
Okay.
just before you wrap it up.
I wasn't going to wrap it up.
Oh, that's all right. That's fine.
I was just going to. I don't know. You know what?
I thought you were going to move on. And
no, you know what I'm like. You know what I'm like with stopping talking. I kind of don't know how to do it. So I'll stop talking, and you tell me what question I need to answer.
Okay, it's from Joe. So, what would you like to see be released from the still currently sealed chambers?
Ooh, wow. What would I like to see added to us?
Question.
It is a good question. Do you know, I have no real idea. I mean, it's. I tend not to have a great imagination of my own.
Joe, you've rendered him speechless.
I tend to bounce better off other people's ideas and then build on them. And go, but to actually think of a first principles concept myself, the cupboard is bare. So I honestly don't know. I'm excited to see what is next, though. Because GW are always going to want to sell models.
Oh, eyes for sure.
Oh, I know what Joe's talking about. I know what Joe is talking about. So at the bottom of that picture on page 36, there are 3 chambers named that.
Yeah, he's just put a comment on there.
Has he? Yeah.
He wants, let me in.
They're named, but there's absolutely no information about them. One is the Ruination Chamber. The Covenant Chamber. And the Logister Chamber. It's like filing. Paper clips are their weapon. The Ruination Chamber sounds freaking awesome. Whatever that is, I want a lot of it. I don't know what that is. Sounds cool. Hit me with that.
That one.
That's
the one.
That one.
I don't have any more.
No more?
No more.
Oh. So people have not been asking a lot of questions.
No, there's been a lot of chat between themselves, so it's provoked a lot of chat, but no questions as such.
Oh, well, should we do some Discord ones then?
We can do. Oh, there's one from Moog on there. Can you see that one?
Screw those guys.
No.
Hate
Arthur
them?
Vanguard. No, Arthur Vanguard. The lot that have the huge mortal wounds for days.
Crossbow people. Yeah.
Yeah, to adapt it slightly, but that's the general thing.
Yeah. But that's one of the things about the various armies. I mean, I know you got vaporized by the Claw and his big crossbow guys. The Claw built his army, but that was a brotherhood, and it was based on what he could get off eBay at a reasonable price, which is really cool. You'll also get some people going, that is a really gross unit. I want 5 of them. That to me, less cool. The thing I am enjoying is the fact that actually now I know enough to go, I am going to do a Vanguard chamber. And actually, the fact that there's 2 units that can murderate things from distance offsets the fact that all the other units are a bit poo. So that's a nice balance. If you're taking the ranged murdenators with the annihilators that drop in and murderate stuff, and then this and then that and the other, and you're seeing that every time, less fun.
There's one there from Scott.
Scott.
So do you prefer filming other people playing, or you playing versus someone, or solo hammer?
Oh, wow.
Which do you prefer?
So, which do I prefer? Oh, I don't know that I have a preference. They are very different. When I'm doing I'll tell you a little bit about each one. When I'm doing solo hammer, I have complete control of what's going on. And I can roll some dice, and then without fear of offending the player, I can say, and these have been utterly annihilated by blah, blah, blah. And I can tell the story a lot more because I don't have to interact with another person. I can stop start as I see fit. So I tend to do the story a lot more. Solo hammer is a huge load on the brain because for the entire game, you do not stop thinking. When you're playing someone else, you go, right, it's your turn, your movement phase, your brain goes off. You sit down. You might read some cards. You might flick through your book. You might watch what your opponent's doing, but you don't have to think. Then when they're doing their shooting, you occasionally have to pick up some dice and roll some saves. You have to pick up dice and roll some saves, but you're reacting to an external stimulus. When you are doing solo hammer, you have to work out what you're doing. You then have to move everything. You have to decide if you're using command points, stratagems, magic items. You then have to try and decide if the other army is doing anything to counter that. Then you have to do all the hit rolls, then all the save rolls, remove all the models, and then go again. And there is absolutely no respite. And it's very easy between takes, between cuts, to go, oh, and just stand there and go, oh, and then, come on, Brett, come on. And back in the room. And that gets increasingly difficult the later in the night it gets to be able to summon the energy. So it's fun. There's a lot of control over it. And you can really make the story come out in the way you're narrating. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of hard work. I have a mind to do a bit more of it because I haven't done it for a very long time. I want to sort of dip in and do the occasional one because I do enjoy it. You also don't have the fun, the banter, the interaction. Playing an opponent and filming is good fun. It's a lot of work because you have the interaction with the other person. You're not making all the decisions, but you're still having to interact and capture everything. You can also get some good banter going, and you can sort of bounce off each other with either banter or thoughts or ideas or where the narrative's going or explanations for why things have happened, and obviously interacting with with human beings who you enjoy spending time with is a lot of fun. So I enjoy that for those reasons. It's still fairly intensive on the brain, not so much though. And equally, prefer filming other people playing. And the reason I've been doing so much of that recently is because of my mental health and because I have not had as much ability to actually play without my brain seizing up. That's much more straightforward to do because you can just say, right, you ask me what's shooting at what? Right, this is firing at that. Have you got the dice ready? Yes. Right. And now such and such is firing at such and such. How many shots? 8. Roll them. And then you don't with when you're playing yourself or when you are solo hammering, you have to prep all that information. You have to think about it. When you're filming, it's much less of a load on the brain, which is why I've done much more of that recently, because it is easier. You also get more banter with a group of people in the room, and you can sort of rib them a little bit as you're filming, and that's really quite social. So I do like that. But that's kind of what I think about the 3 different ways of doing that, I think.
Okay, do you want to go back to Niall's question from earlier on?
I did kind of cover it
That's fine then.
When we were talking about wizards.
I've got Discord now. Ooh. So Mick the Machine asks, has GW ever sent you an item that you really didn't like and so did not do a reveal on or a video content for?
GW don't insist that you do something with everything they send you. There's no way they realistically could, unless they were going to ask you, here's an item, do you want it? You tend to sort of go in for things in groups. Like I get the 40k stuff, I get the AOS stuff, but they tell you what's coming next. They don't expect you to use all of it, but obviously you do use some of it. So some things aren't relevant. So for example, for 40k, I get a lot of the chapter approved stuff, a lot of the grand tournament packs. No interest for me whatsoever. I just disregard them, and they're fine with that. So there are some things I don't do because they're not relevant to myself or my audience. Occasionally, there have been things I haven't done because I've timed out and I've not been able to fit everything in a given week. That happened with some of the Votan releases, just with my schedule being what it was. I didn't have the time to unbox the models before they were released, and after that, it was a fairly moot point, so I didn't end up doing it. There are very few models that I do not review because they have just no interest for me. There have been a couple. One immediately springs to mind, but I can't talk about it yet because it's a future thing.
Okay, so Hill42 says, what's your opinion on the correct plural for codex? Codex, sorry.
It's codices.
Codices.
Although that is the correct plural, although people do look at you like they've just scraped you off their shoe. What is that so-and-so talking about? Sorry, just moving the keyboard to create cat space. So sometimes I'll say codexes because it sounds more natural. But I am of the opinion that the correct plural is codices.
Okay, so another one from Discord. Moog says, following the launch of a boarding action rules subset for 40k, how would you go about adapting AOS for tight enclosed corridor fighting?
So GW kind of already done it. Let me get this right because there's some stuff I can say and some stuff I can't. The last the last General's Handbook was set in Galat, which is a part of Gur, and in that it talks about the tunnels of death and veteran tunnel fighters, and the it says the rule set in here, the matched play adaptations to the core rule set in here are to represent tunnel fighting, and they kind of make sense. Some of it's to do with, excuse me, I mean Crimson. A lot of that is to do with adaptation around the combat range. It moves it to the 40k ranks rather than the AOS inches. I've not actually played it, so I don't know how well it plays, but it seemed to make sense when I was reading it that it would work well for narrative tunnels. And then I thought, I can't do a table like that because I haven't got enough scenery to make it dense enough. So, I moved on.
Okay, so do you want Moog gets me because sometimes I don't know whether I should read it out or not. Just have a read of that and see if you want to read it out.
With that one?
Yeah.
How do I properly review Duncan Rhodes' paint range without dropping at least 1.5 tons on them? You don't, you can't. I certainly couldn't. That's why there are some amazing paint ranges out there. And some people say to me, don't use the GW white, use the Villaggio white, or this white, or that white. And I'm like, as soon as I tip my toe into one colour from another range, that's just then another 100 pots of paint I have got to buy. So the way I deal with that is by not going there. This may not be the best paint set in the world, but it's the one I've got and it's the one I'll use. And I may at some future point shift wholesale to it, but I am not going to do that because same reason I'm not playing Heresy. I don't want to collect another 25 armies because I know I would. That's one of the reasons anyway. So there you go. I don't think you can. I certainly couldn't.
Okay. Starkiller says, will 10th edition see the return of the Lion to counter the arrival of the Red Angel? What type of narrative would it take to launch him? Moog, I know. I'm coming back to it.
I have predicted the return of the Lion every year for about the last 5 or 6 years, and it hasn't happened. So I'm not going to say I think it'll happen in 10th edition because that will mean it does not happen. What I would love to happen is I would love for them to bring back one of the other loyalist Primarchs. And I would like there to be a bit of a story rift with Guilliman, where they're not necessarily happy with what he's done, not enough to create a war about it, not an all-out war, but just something to give some of the Imperial interactions a bit of depth and introduce a little bit of factionalism to make it really interesting. And I think that the Lion would be a splendid choice for that because he already had problems with Guilliman in what was the book called? When Guilliman believed the Emperor had died and he tried to establish the Second Imperium in Ultramar, he wanted the Lion thought he was as bad as Horus and went to go and off him. And there was a lot of conversation about why that should or shouldn't happen. There's already antagonism between them there, and Guilliman is basically doing what he was going to do back then, and the Lion would not be happy. Oh, we have a member chat from Aaron 582 Railways. Heresy is great. I've already collected over 10,000 points split across 3 legions and Mechanicum since the summer. Splendid. Glad to hear you're enjoying it. You have neatly illustrated one of the reasons why I don't want to go there. Because I was more or less on top with my 40k armies. I mean, I had an awful lot still to do, but as soon as I turned to AOS, I think I've got another 25. It's a lot of armies. There's only a few I don't have.
Ready?
Yaha.
Secondborn says, how are you organising your Stormcast collection? Organising. That's a key word.
Trays and buckets. So I have got Oh dear. So all the Sacrosanct stuff is in one box. They are going to be. I had a bit of epiphany about this because I'm like, how am I going to do this? Does this mean now I need to
Commander
buy?
Autism, no.
Good
no.
lad. Good lad.
Just no. Chris, intervene.
So I thought, well, I'm going to need 90 Liberators if I'm doing it this way. So what I decided, I had a bit of an epiphany. I said, right, the Astral Templars, because I want to use them in the Siege of Excelsis, but I worked out that whilst I built an army, I thought, yes, I will use this in Siege of Excelsis. It's a Vanguard army, and they aren't going to be guarding Excelsis. They're going to be out there in the wilds. So actually, I've built entirely the wrong army to be able to do that. So I need to build up a warrior chamber for my for them. I need to build up a warrior chamber for those games. So that's one. And I thought they're going to be my Stormcast army that I play against destruction, or at least I focus on for destruction. I sort of had I was trying to think, what am I going to do for the Tale of Poor Gamers? I thought, well, I could do some chaos, I could do some undead, I could do this, I could do that. And then I thought, well, I could do some Stormcast. And what I've kind of decided is that I want a Stormcast chamber that generally fights against destruction, and I want a Stormcast chamber that generally fights against death, and a Stormcast chamber that generally fights against chaos. So I've got a warrior chamber's worth of stuff that's going in the Astral Templar pile that I'm busy assembling when I veg out in front of the telly at the moment. I've got all the Sacrosanct stuff, which are going to be my versus death army. And then I am going to have a hodgepodge of units for my Hammers of Sigmar. I'm not going to say to myself, I have to completely I have to do a full warrior chamber for that. I'm going to go Brotherhood and have all the odd bits and bobs. And then in a given game, the narrative can mostly be about a Brotherhood being formed. And I might end up with enough bits here or there to be able to say, and this is the remnants of a warrior chamber that's been bolstered by a nearby such and such. So that's how I'm planning on organizing. So at the moment, the Astral Templars are in the to be assembled pile. That's downstairs. I've ended up with a lot of other random stuff in that pile as well, but that's by the downstairs.
Downstairs.
What did I say?
Yeah, downstairs. In the lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's living there now.
Yeah, next to me.
No more room.
So I can build.
Else.
No, none. And then up here, I've got the Sacrosanct chamber in a box. They are the thingies. They're going to be the Ambrose the Helden Hammer, and then everything else is in another box, which are the Hammers of Sigmar. #Sigh.
What would you like? So Aaron582 says, what would you like to be in an Emperor's Children Codex?
What would I like to be in an Emperor's Children Codex? I would like to see variants of all the generic units from the Heresy and where they are now. So I would still like to see Terminator equivalent. I would like to see like a Bike equivalent, a Devastator equivalent, a Havoc equivalent, and the Raptor equivalent. But sculpts that are all really weird. I would like it to feel like something that was once a Legion that has got utterly messed up, than something that doesn't bear much passing resemblance to the Legion that it was. So if you take Death Guard, for an example, I really like a lot of the Death Guard stuff, but a lot of those units have just come out of absolutely nowhere. The plague mortars, the drones, the various different things are not a legacy of the original Legion. There's no nod to the original Legion in their introduction. Similar with the rest of the units. It's all, And that's what I'm looking for. That's what I would want in a Thousand Sons Codex, is what I would want in a World Eater Codex, is what I would want in an Emperor's Children Codex.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, so Pixel Reaper asks, what advice would you give to someone wanting to create a campaign similar to that of the Rising Shadow or Siege of Excelsis?
So the Rising Shadow and the Siege of Excelsis were done in very different ways. What?
Sorry, Scott. Scott, that is very true. Scott reckons you could. Mick says build an extension. Scott says that you could make one out of sprues. Yes, he could if he saved them all. Yes.
Yeah.
That is so true.
So they were both done in very different ways. The Rising Shadow was I got in. There's a group of people I play regularly. I got in touch with everyone in that group and said, "Here is a weekend. Here's a date. I want to get some people around that weekend to film a campaign. Who's up for it? Who's available?" And a number of people came back and said that they were available. A number of people said, "Oh no, I'm busy doing other things that weekend." And once I knew who was available, I asked what people wanted to play. And some people had some options. I looked at the options and that they'd said, because I didn't want people to feel that they had to play something specific. I said, what do you want to play? And there were a few choices. And out of the combination, so some people said, I don't really want to play this or this or this, but I'd quite like to play either that or that. And so I looked at the options and thought, what can we do story-wise with this combination of things? Then it's a case of, okay, how many so once you've got that story, you then look at the logistics, of the games. So at the time we had the plan of doing 5 games on the weekend. We'd done that previously with the Thondia campaign and it had worked. 5 games didn't end up working for this one, but there were lessons learned there. But so we said, right, 5 games. And then I thought, okay, how can I break the story into 5 games? And part of that was then trying to work. There was also logistics. Who's coming on Friday? Who's coming on Saturday? Does anyone have any days that they're a bit dodgier about for whatever reason? Right, who's available on what days? Then I wanted to make sure everyone had even games. So we had 5 people playing, 5 games. So I said, right, everyone is going to play in 3 games. So then it was, okay, what are the 3 oh wow, 10 gifted memberships by Yeston Jones. Oh wow, Yeston, thank you very much. That is so generous. Thank you very much. That is amazing. Thank you. I then looked at what I sort of looked at who the main protagonists were. So the main protagonists in that instance were the Gene Stealers and the Tyranids. So I said, right, well, the story has to be, it progresses from Gene Stealers through to Tyranids. So that was kind of set. So I'm like, okay, it's going to go Gene Stealer, Gene Stealer, Gene Stealer, and Tyranid, Tyrannid, Tyrannid. So that was then sort of the spine of the story that everything else needed to fit around. So I then looked at the logistics, who could pair with who, and then started thinking about what those games might look like. I did a very brief write-up of them, sent it out to the guys who were going to be playing, got some feedback, tweaked things around a little bit. Then we discussed points and logistics of who might want to play what. And, excuse me, Max is sore. And that's how that happened. We have a super chat from Wilma Kimmer. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing it right. How much for all the newer videos to be added to playlists so I can have more sleep and zone out material. Thank you for all your amazing work. Yes, I guess I should do a bit of a recce on that. I could probably do with refining some of that a bit more. No, I'll do that. Remind me.
I can do that. Yeah.
Remind me I need to do that. Good point. Thank you. I used to do that a lot, but that was when I was trying to do things between members and public stuff and keep them all tied in together. I guess I didn't really stop and think about the need to do that. Now I'm not doing that.
We did sort of say we'd have a look at that on Discord as well, just to have a bit of a recce on both, didn't we? So yeah.
So the following, so the Siege of Excelsis as a campaign, very different prospect. That's not all being filmed on one weekend. That is going to be filmed, played, and shown probably over the course of about 12 months. There are a lot of games to have there. I read through the book and then identified what I thought the key points were. There's the meeting of a couple of the big bads. There's the bit at the wall, then there's the ending. Like, right, these are the points. What other games and who are the factions involved? What other games could I have in between? What would I like to show? Then there's who in the group of people I film with has what? Right, do we have this? Do we have that? Okay, I need to work around this because no one has that faction, but that's okay. I can narrate that as part of one of the videos near where it's happening. And then I've sort of gone, right, okay, I need to bump up this army, bump up that army, bump up that army. So one of the first things I did was need Gargants. No one's got Gargants. Need to paint some Gargants. So Crimson built all the Gargants for me. Painty. We have Gargants. Because one of the main bits in the story is Kragnos with a shed load of Gargants kicking a lot of stuff out of other stuff. Yes. Next.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I was just looking at something else. I was slightly.
You were in full admin mode, weren't you?
I was in full admin mode. Yes, I was.
Well, that is what you were here for. So you
can
be forgiven.
I'm not doing midday job. So, where's it gone? Right. Okay, so I think we've only got one more, and
that's good because we're about an hour and a half in, and we're getting quite late.
Well, I've got two more comments, but the first one is from Mick. Let me start. Mick.
Make the machine.
Yeah. Do you ever think you will stop buying new armies and instead just concentrate on bolstering the armies you have?
No. I get when I read stories and when I dig into things, I get really excited and I want to do everything.
Aaron 582 said, "I think this will be when Paul has them all."
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I'm not a big one for homebrew, so there is I could go through and count up and actually create an actual limit of so I've now got X out of this many because that's how many there are that I would want to do as it stands and track both numbers. Okay, so I think that is a good point to start to wrap up.
Yeah.
Because it's nighty dreamy snoozy snooze pretty soon. Thank you all very much. Biggest thank you to Crimson for keeping
wait a minute, I've got to say this. Something I didn't read out that was on Discord was one word Moog. Second word heresy. That's what he put on. And then he reminded me on here that he did it. So I just thought I'd say it.
So So there is a sound file on the channel's Discord server of James March in a very, very squeaky voice going, heresy, 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 heresy. It all got a little bit delirious at the weekend. We were all very tired. So big thank you to the admin wizard that is Crimson.
Yeah, we've got 2 thank yous for the super chats, which is Mick and William. I don't know how I'm saying this right, but Kima, William. Anyway, and Aaron 582 Railways used his 18-month membership comment, which is fantastic.
Yestin.
Yestin.
It's a Welsh name, I believe.
Yestin Jones, what a superstar. So thank you so much for your 10 gifted memberships. So we have Banished Pest 2. That's for the second time. So we were banished once. Banished Pest 2. Sanguiri Guards, Mark 1701, Christian McBride, Elliot Thompson, Jimmy, Jaffu, fantastic name, Little Duke, Eric Cooper, and P. Wright all took him up on those. So hope to see you forever now. That's it.
You guys should all have access to the community Discord to join and join in the fun and shenanigans.
Absolutely. That's it from me.
And on that happy note, thank you all. Oh, Major Ring Sting.
Oh,
super chatted. Thanks for your time.
Sorry.
Calm it. Keep it under control.
Ring Stingy's been round for a go, right? I'm sure.
Well,
dear.
Thank you for the super chat. Thank you all. Thank you, clearly. Thank you all for joining us, and take care. We will see you in the next one.
Thanks, everybody. Oh, and
Bye
just one last thing. Chris, thinking of you, sending you lots of hugs and kisses. That's it. It's a girl thing. Bye.
Bye. I just turn it off then.